speaker for today is Most Reverend Donald Kettler, Bishop of the Diocese of St. Cloud in Minnesota. Bishop Kettler was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to Joseph and Marguerite Kettler. His family later moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where he and his 3 siblings were raised. He received undergraduate and divinity degrees at St. John's University in Collegeville before being ordained to the priesthood on May 29, 1970. Bishop Kettler then served as an associate pastor in Aberdeen and Sioux Falls until 1979, when he began coordinating work for the diocesan offices of Sioux Falls. In 1981, he entered Catholic University of America, where he obtained his licentiate in canon law. Bishop Kettler was named Judicial Vicar of Sioux Falls in 1983 and resumed his work coordinating its diocesan offices from 1984 to 1987. During this time, he also was celebrating a weekly televised Mass. On June 7, 2002, Bishop Kettler was appointed the 8th Bishop of Fairbanks, Alaska, by Pope John Paul II. He received his episcopal consecration on August 22nd from Archbishop Roger Schweitz, OMI, with Bishops Michael Warfel and Robert Carlson serving as co-consecrators. He was the first diocesan priest and non-Jesuit to head the diocese. Pope Francis named Bishop Kettler the 9th Bishop of the Diocese of St. Cloud. As an aside, when we were on our pilgrimage in Rome last fall, the Catholic Daughter pilgrimage that went to Rome, Bishop Kettler happened to be visiting the seminarians from the St. Cloud Diocese who were in Rome studying at the Pontifical North American College. Our chaplain on the trip was Father Alan Walensky, also from the St. Cloud Diocese, and he arranged for Bishop Kettler to say the Mass for our pilgrimage group at the North American College the night we visited there. Thank you again, Bishop Kettler. Using our theme as the topic of his presentation, Bishop Kettler will speak on whatever you do for the least of my brethren, you do for me. Bishop Kettler, I present to you the Catholic Daughters of the Americas.
Should not have mentioned that Mass that we had in Rome, because that's what I'm going to use today. So you're going to hear it again. No, that's a lie. No. Whatsoever you do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you do for me. I hope that I will be able to put a little flesh on these words for just a few minutes here this day. But before that, first of all, again, as I mentioned in Mass, thank you to all of you for what you do for our church and our people as Catholic daughters. You are instruments, but more than that, you are sacraments, which means the presence of Jesus Christ present with us today through what you do individually and as Christians and as Catholics, but also as a community, as an institution of Catholic daughters. I know what you do. I was chaplain of a Catholic Daughters Court in Sioux Falls for 20 years, so I know what you are doing. So now some thoughts, as I mentioned this morning, about mercy. When I first heard that Pope Francis had called for an extraordinary Jubilee year of mercy, my thought was, well, this would give us and the church a chance to focus on a well-known theme of the church, God's mercy for the people, and perhaps give some needed emphasis to the importance that God is merciful to everyone, and we in turn are then to act mercifully ourselves. But what in light of what has been happening in our world, in Nice, in Paris, in Orlando, in the Twin Cities, in Dallas, and in Baton Rouge, more than just saying mercy is important. And that God is merciful needs to be emphasized. We have to say, without real mercy, our very existence as a civil society is threatened to be destroyed. So I want to spend some time with you in seriously discussing mercy and looking at mercy. I had an opportunity to write a pastoral letter earlier this year for my diocese on the Year of Mercy. Much of what I say here today comes from that letter. Now, that letter was 36 pages in length. I won't go quite that long today. However, before I talk further about God's mercy and how we are to be instruments of mercy in our church and in our world, I must reflect on conditions in our world today. The terrorism, the violence, and the hatred, radical Islamism, a lack of respect for human beings and for life itself, and whether racism rests in our own hearts, mine and others. How does mercy find a place in all of this? How can we practice mercy as did Jesus Christ? Or must all of our efforts be given to protecting ourselves while condemning actions and actors of terrorism and violence? Is this all we can do? I believe that without a recognition of mercy and an emphasis on mercy and living the example and message of Jesus Christ, our world will have little chance of remaining civil and peaceful. It's necessary for you and for me to be instruments of mercy, love, reconciliation, and peace. Real peacemakers. Pope Francis has witnessed personally to the centrality of mercy in his papacy. St. John Paul II made mercy a topic of his second encyclical on divine mercy. St. Faustina Kowalska offered us a special devotion to God's mercy. Pope Benedict, in his first encyclical, God is Love, proclaimed love and mercy to be at the center of the church's life and the church's social teaching. Mercy was obviously significant during Second Vatican Council. The centrality of mercy to Catholic teaching and to our understanding of the work of the church in the world has been a consistent and increasingly more robust teaching and practice of the church over the last decades. But it's not just the last half century of this teaching on mercy. It all begins with a merciful God. The Bible, both the Old and the New Testaments, reveal the character of God. God's nature is mercy. What becomes clear from God's revelation of himself and his actions in Scripture is that mercy and love is God's essence. God is love. It is sometimes said that the God of the Old Testament is a God of justice or even of vengeance. And the God of the New Testament is a God of love and mercy in Jesus Christ. Yes, there are some texts in the Old Testament to support this view. But the clearest picture of the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Ruth, and David, Isaiah, Hosea, and Esther is a God of mercy. In the scriptures, we read often how God's anger passes, but his mercy endures forever. This mercy is found in the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis. God looked at the world, and it was very good. We disobeyed God, but God did not destroy or abandon us. God formed a covenant saying, I will be your God, and you will be my people. When God's people broke that covenant, God's compassion turned God's own justice upside down. God decides not to respond in anger or wrath, but with mercy. Despite the presence of sin, betrayal, and brokenness in the world, God does not react in anger, but remains a God of unconditional love and acts according to his own inherent kindness and mercy. By being merciful, God does not allow the sin of the world to change his basic character or his essence. God remains free to be God, and because of that, to be merciful. The story of God's mercy fills the New Testament. Jesus Christ is the face of the Father's mercy. The love shared within the three persons of the Blessed Trinity, that love is now made visible and tangible in Jesus' entire life. What Jesus made clear over and over is that the God who reigns is a God of mercy, and that the reign of this God is one where mercy shapes people's lives and through them touches others. This is how you and I are to live. Please reflect sometime seriously on three of Jesus' parables, his teachings: the prodigal son, the good Samaritan, and the workers in the vineyard. I'm not going to say much about the prodigal son and his merciful father, or about the good Samaritan. You know these stories and teachings about God's mercy. However, I want to say something about the parable of the workers in the vineyard. Jesus compares the kingdom of God to a landowner who went out to hire workers for his vineyard at different times of the day. Those who were hired last received the same salary as those who had worked all day. This parable says that in the reign of God, God gives more than anyone could possibly expect. God's love and mercy goes beyond what is expected or even what is just. People are gifted by more than they could ever hope for. The life of Jesus reveals the mercy of God, his forgiveness of sinners, his favor for the poor, the marginalized, the sick, and the suffering. Jesus hates the sin, but loves the sinner. He requires people who have sinned to make retribution for their sins, and he says to them, don't sin again. Of course, Jesus' greatest gift of mercy was his total giving of himself on the cross. His mercy brought forgiveness of sin and opened heaven for us all. Despite what we human beings have done, despite what justice and fairness might demand, God does not destroy or even give up on us. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. God has entrusted the continuing work of mercy to his church and to his people, both individually and collectively. Pope Francis has reminded us that our works of mercy and the church's works of mercy go to the very heart of what it means to be church, and to the very heart of our identity and our mission as Christians and as Catholics. Our witness as church to the mercy of God requires us to make mercy active in our lives and try then to share it into the world we live in. If the church is a sacrament of mercy, and she is, we have to ask ourselves, what are the concrete forms in which mercy is present in our families, parishes, dioceses, and to the world in which we live? How are we, all of the baptized, making the mercy of God present in the world? How do we share it? And how do we teach it? For if we have credibility as instruments of mercy, we must not only talk about mercy, we have to practice it. Pope Francis tells us the church must be a place of mercy, freely given, where everyone can feel welcomed, loved, forgiven, and encouraged to live the good of the gospel. The Lord wants us to belong to a church that knows how to open her arms and welcome everyone. That she is not a house for the few, but a house for everyone, where all can be renewed, transformed, sanctified by his love. The strongest and the weakest, sinners, the indifferent, those who feel discouraged or lost. In imitation of Christ, we must put forgiveness ahead of judgment and bridges before walls. I have a special request to make of all of you. The sacrament of penance, reconciliation, is a powerful sacrament of God's mercy. We all need it. Please receive the sacrament here, or soon, or certainly during the season of Lent. Try to receive it regularly. God forgives all, and God forgives always. Receive God's mercy so that you can more effectively bring that mercy to others. Pope Francis has added an important feature to the year of mercy. He wants us to emphasize practicing the corporal and the spiritual works of mercy. Feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, welcome the stranger, the immigrant, the refugee, shelter the homeless, visit and heal the sick and the imprisoned, bury the dead. The spiritual works, counsel the doubtful, instruct the ignorant, admonish sinners, comfort the afflicted, forgive ourselves, forgive others their offenses, bear wrongs patiently, pray for the living and for the dead. Personally, as yourselves and as courts of Catholic daughters, as parishes, as dioceses, find a particular way to put at least one of these corporal or spiritual works of mercy into action. You find that way. If these works of mercy are practiced by us, we will bring alive the life of mercy in the Christian life. God's command is to be merciful to any and to all. This command is not merely an ideal, a feeling, or a sentiment. It must be real in our concrete actions to meet the actual needs of actual people. Some works of mercy are personal, one-to-one actions, and some are best done with others, through church organizations, or through social agencies of one sort or another. You Catholic daughters are one of the important church institutions of mercy. Again, Pope Francis reminds us, the church, you and I, are called above all to be credible witnesses to mercy, professing it and living it as the core of the revelation of Jesus Christ.